How do best-selling authors hit every deadline and make hitting their daily writing goals look so easy? Do they know something that you and I don't know? Why do you and I often find ourselves spending hours staring at a blank screen? This writer's block can go on for weeks or even months. Oof. When it gets to that stage, I really don't know about you, but I start to sweat. And then comes the editing, and it's here that you suddenly realize the pressure got to you, and you just started writing down whatever you could to hit that word count goal that you'd set for yourself. Or maybe you've been caught with a chapter of descriptions and world building, which is great, but the plot hasn't actually advanced at all. It might even be so bad that you decide to just scrap the entire chapter altogether. And this is where we have uncovered the real problem. So I'm going to help you write smarter, not harder. Let me start by saying that I get it. I fall into this trap myself all the time. You simply want to get those ideas down as quickly as possible. This is, after all, advice that you hear regularly, right? Get those fleeting thoughts down on paper before they disappear forever. It means that we don't want to be dismissive of any ideas that pop into our heads while we are in the flow, and so we act on them right away. But when something blocks our flow, it can be a big barrier, and we can get stuck. This can quickly lead to a negative writing experience for that day. And if too many of these add up, then it impacts on your entire book. Right? What we need is to help you stack as many positive writing sessions as possible. The more positive writing sessions, the more your confidence grows, the more your writing progresses. The opposite happens if they're negative. So I've got a technique for you today that's going to help you transform your productivity. Technique used by some of the most successful writers, whether they are authors, journalists, copywriters, or scriptwriters. And if that wasn't enough, I can vouch for how well this works because I use it all the time. It's actually taken 50% off the amount of time it takes me to produce a first draft, and that's an accurate statistic, by the way. Whatever writing project I'm working on at the time. It's something that a lot of freelance editors use regularly, and it really helps to speed up the editing process. Let's say you're writing a thriller, right? Which is usually around the 60 to 70,000 word mark. Or even if you're writing an epic fantasy novel, which could be as much as 120 to 200,000 words. There's a lot of detail to include, and it's entirely possible that your A plot, B plot, C plot storylines could all just be summed up within about 50,000 words, right? And in that fantasy example, the rest of it could all be world building. And so this presents a great opportunity to focus on building the plot first and then shift to those descriptions, the environment and other settings at a later date. Now you might be thinking, if we leave out those descriptions while writing, how on earth do we know where to come back to and fill in? Allow me to introduce the JQ method. JQ stands for just quickly. Why JQ? Well, because JQ are statistically the least common pair of consecutive letters. They are hardly ever next to each other, and they're actually quite rare even on their own individually. The way this method works is if you're in the flow and you just need to come back to a section, then just write name JQ or date JQ. Then when you're ready to come back and fill in these sections, just hit Control F on your MacBook or the equivalent on Windows, which I have no idea what that is. I don't use Windows. But I think as you'll all be using a Word doc, it should be the same, to search for JQ in the document, and wherever it appears, you need to go and add some detail. Like I said, I've been personally using this technique ever since I discovered it. I'm writing a book right now where I need to check dates and facts and references, and often while I'm in the flow of writing, there are elements that I need to check for accuracy, but I don't want to interrupt the writing and leave it, so I'll just write, whatever it is, reference JQ, and then I know that I can come back to that at a later stage. So it makes it super easy to find the areas that I need to come back to, and then I can flesh these sections out. And the same is true with a fictional book. So you might write Soldier JQ to come back and flesh out who is this minor character, what's their name, or describe JQ to come back and add more detail to a scene or a dialogue, right? You get the idea. This promotes efficiency and speed in your writing by eliminating your snagging points. This even works with large, more structural elements, such as potentially an entire chapter. You could write chapter 3 JQ and come back to it later to see if that extra chapter was even needed in the first place. Then if you do come back and decide it wasn't needed, well, you've saved even more time. And to the contrary, if you do decide, okay, this chapter is needed, well, then you can add some foreshadowing because you know what's coming next. I've given you just a small selection of how to use this, but really you can use it for anything in your story. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan to use the JQ method or if you have any other questions about this method. And for those of you wanting to permanently eradicate writer's block, then check out this video on screen now.